And we are back, folks, for another edition of the Michigan Basketball Insider season wrap-up edition and go into a full off-season edition. And there's really like no time for a break because they actually go right into the portal during the tournament. And fortunately for Dusty and crew, they clearly were already working on it. But before we hit the ground running, let me introduce my esteemed co-host and friend. He was an All-American out of Clarkston High School in the early 80s, where he went on to the University of Michigan to a standout career to become a first-round draft pick. Spent 10 years in the National Basketball Association, where he has since become one of the best basketball commentators in the land, both in the NBA. He commentates for the NBA, for the NBA's Detroit Pistons. They're back in the playoffs. Hooray for that. And then, of course, commentating for our Michigan Wolverines here on the Basketball Insider and, of course, college basketball at large. He is the one and only Timmy Mack, as I call him. You all know him as Tim McCormick. Tim, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It was a good year, a lot of fun, especially when you consider that last year they won 8 games. The head coach was fired. Any players that had any value left, and the Michigan basketball program was absolutely gutted. I have nothing but praise for Dusty May and the coaches and the players that stayed too. They really embraced being Michigan Wolverines. They embraced the culture. And so I give the year an A+. I would have never expected them to be battling for a Big Ten championship. And the excitement was real. The intrigue was very intriguing to me. And I didn't think they could fix it this fast. And so it's a great sign for the future, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think what you saw with Dusty was a guy who's obviously an outstanding ball coach. You got to have multiple elements, I think, as a college coach in this day and age. You got to be an excellent teacher. By and large, you have to also be able to do talent identification as far as the staff is concerned. I thought he showed excellent ability to do that. You got to be an excellent recruiter. You know, we used to really, really look at that as, hey, can a guy really get out there and recruit? And we knew Dusty had the ability to do that. Can he coach? But now, roster construction, Tim, because Juwan could recruit. Juwan could coach. You can't tell me Juwan Howard can't coach. Juwan Howard had some stuff, man, some X's and O's. I think the thing that tripped Juwan Howard up was roster construction.
Mm-hmm.
What Dusty May showed you in overnight to the nth degree was excellent roster construction, Tim. He showed you a masterclass in that, and that's why he had the program turned around overnight.
Well, he showed a comprehensive approach as a coach. You know, if you're a great X and O's guy, but you can't recruit, that doesn't do you any good. And if you know, the other way is the same scenario. Like you got to be able to do it all. And so he went out and got some talented players. And then as we watched them, we saw that there are major flaws. They were high turnover team, erratic 3-point shooting. The defensive rebounding was a concern from day one. They had no backup point guard. The team lacked secondary playmakers. And some of the key guys were wildly erratic. All things considered, to get 27 wins, a second place in the Big Ten, 2 NCAA wins, that's pretty darn good. So he did the best he could with his roster construction in a very short period of time. And then he helped the players overcome some of those flaws. So yeah, it was very impressive. And I'm excited to see how he'll do in the future.
Yeah, coaching the talent you have and being able to maximize what they're able to do. I mean, I think they had some idea of this too big lineup and what it could be. But I think they adapted to it, and let it become something more based on what Danny showed he could do. Okay, let's roll with that. And they really evolved. The team really evolved with that, Tim. I thought that showed a great ability to coach as well.
Right. And when I watched the Auburn game, I thought the better team won.
Oh yeah.
They had playmakers everywhere you looked. I mean, they shot the ball. So as a matter of fact, when we were winning by 9 with like 12 to go, I just kept thinking, what in the world is going on here? Like, could this really happen? Because this would be a massive upset. Auburn's guards were way better. And the thing that it reminded me about, and I think I've shared this with you over the years, and it's always stuck with me and makes sense to me. Doing a UConn game a while back, Jim Calhoun told me that his philosophy is always to have 3 really good point guards. And the idea is that if you only have 2 and somebody gets hurt or somebody gets in foul trouble, then you're really in trouble. So you need 3. And the way the game is played today, always having multiple guys out there that could take charge of the offense, that can get by their guy, that can be driving kick threats. And last year, Trey was the only real point guard. You had some guys that maybe could dribble the ball up the court, but they were not really true point guards. And so when Elliot Cadeau was signed, I immediately thought, man, Trey's not going to be around long at all. Like when he saw all the competition at Auburn in their backcourt, he took off, and so his departure was kind of easy to predict.
Yeah, I guess I was seeing sort of being Pollyanna-ish about it, thinking that, man, it could really be a complimentary sort of thing. But I think you're right. If you look at what happened in the past at Auburn and really seeing the possibilities that were on the horizon for him as far as how many minutes would be available, I think that was his assessment. Yeah, would I be a starter? Would I still be would I still get a lot of minutes as a starting player here? Sure, but would I get those minutes as the point guard? No. I think that's how he looked at it.
Well, I think it goes one step even deeper than that. The power brokers in this whole thing are the agents, because they're encouraging players to leave, and I'm quite certain that as soon as Elliot was signed, there was an agent in his ear telling Trey, okay, you got to go. We've got Miami's ready to pay you this much more. Like the urgency of going to another school just bumps up your asking price. And so I think that's a big part of why he left.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong about that either. I think the ability to command the top dollar in the portal, that price is going up every single year. But I definitely also think what your first point that you made, looking at the Auburn piece, when you consider that both point guards left, Aiden Holloway left too, because you see that there's only so many minutes that are available for that spot, and the notion that you are going to get 30 minutes as the lead guard, 25 minutes as the lead guard. I don't think that's the model here. When you want to get some of those minutes, not just for Elliot Cadeau. I mean, you're trying to get some of those minutes for LJ Cason too, right? Mm-hmm. And then you got a young fella who's a combo as well, and Trey McKenney. You aren't just gonna. I mean, he's talented. You're gonna give him an opportunity to get some minutes. So, how much of that takes away from what my plan is for myself? If I'm Tre Donaldson, now the way I looked at it, I was like, oh man, this creates an opportunity for him to get lead guard minutes. He can play off the ball. Trey, to me, Tim, was the only guy that they had last year that all that stuff. I was actually, Tim, who could they run off all these pin downs and do all this stuff they didn't have any guy that you really could run some some Trey Stauskas action with, right? I mean, he got that you could really do that with other than Trey. Yeah. And I thought you could maybe do that next year, but that just wasn't to me.
It seemed like we always wanted more from Trey. And from day one, I remember that he reminded me a lot of Doug McDaniel, the Kansas State transfer, and Frankie Collins that went from Michigan to Arizona State to TCU. Like electrifying speed, very exciting, hard to cover. And they had the ball and no one behind them to really play point guard. Like they could go out and play free, and then they score 10 or 11 points and nobody would complain. But the truth is that I don't think Michigan has been getting elite point guard play. You know, somebody that runs the offense, gets people involved, is a really good leader. And so I like Trey. I loved watching him. He has a knack for making big plays. But you know, it's just another player that when the Miami Hurricanes are playing next year, I'll be anxious to tune in and watch him, and I'll root for him. But I think Michigan is capable of getting better point guard play than they've had the last several years.
Yeah, you gotta build on it. You hope that with Elliot Cadeau, we'll break him down. LJ Cason growing from his experience at Carolina. Trey coming in, being a freshman combo guy, giving you some skill. Not being a point guard, but he has some combo skill. You know, maybe he could do some things. You hope that you have a component on this team that gives you some better some better floor generalship than some more consistent floor generalship than maybe you got last year. Yeah. Right. So, and that was on a good team, on a team that won the Big Ten tournament, and on a team that, you know, won 2 games in the NCAA tournament. So it wasn't like, you know, it was terrible. You know, that was on a good team last year. So it's not to be critical of what, you know, say it was dog crap, but can they be better? Yeah, there's an opportunity to improve upon what they were last year.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm interested to watch and see Trey McKenney, because you talked about how he's got some secondary playmaking skills, and I'm curious to see. I'm not sure how he's going to get by people. Maybe he can use his power. He's not the quickest guy.
Nope.
And so that's going to be interesting. There's certainly some minutes that should be available for him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I'm interested to see how he evolves as a player at the next level. What his niche is going to be as scorer and playmaker. He has those skills. I want to see how those skills manifest. I'm not quite sure yet. I'm not ready to predict. I think they're going to manifest. I'm just not. The one skill that I'm ready to say is going to translate the soonest is his shooting. Like, I think I think he's gonna give them some 3-point shooting like right now.
Well,
I think he's gonna help with that.
Do you see any similarities between Roddy Gale and Trey McKenney?
So I think Roddy's more athletic than Trey.
Agreed.
I think that Trey is a more powerful player, a stronger bodied player coming in than Roddy. But I think Roddy is more springy, more twitchy.
Yeah.
I'm sure John, his dad, would be like, hey, Trey's been doing Pilates. He wants me to throw that in there. Trey's been doing his Pilates. So let me make sure that I mention that. He's been doing some things to improve that flexibility and that twitch. So I want to make sure that I mention that. But
when I think about it, you in the past you were really hoping and praying that the high school recruits were legit, because if they weren't, you're stuck with a kid for a lot of years. And now it's not as costly, because if he's not as good as what everybody's thinking, then he'll get frustrated and leave, and you just move on. So I think he's going to be good, but you don't worry about it that much.
Yeah, I think he's going to be good. I think that he is such a high IQ player.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he is such a skilled player that he's going to be good. And so that's why I say, to me, it's, how does he adapt as he gets to this level, to the speed and physicality? It's that's to me, as you get to players who are on your level, size wise, how soon do you adjust to that? That to me is what I want to see. Because you're right, I don't think he's going to be able to just muscle by guys as much. He won't be able to necessarily take, guards down in the paint as much. I don't know. So, he'll be able to shoot, but some of the physical things that he did won't be as available to him as readily as they were in the past. So, how does he get to some of the things that he got to before? I want to wait to see that.
Right now, who gets more minutes next year, LJ Cason or Trey McKenney?
LJ Cason. Yeah, I think the things that we saw in the tournament, especially, his ability to get to the rim and his ability to play in control. That's what I think more than anything else allowed the trust. Like, he could get to the basket better than anybody on the team early in the season. But I mean, you couldn't trust that he was gonna not do that every single time, try to do that every single time down the court early in the season. That's why they weren't playing him. It was like, come on, man. Like, we don't need you jacking shots every time you have the ball, right? They started to be able to trust that he wasn't going to try to take over the game every time he had the ball late in the season. Thus, he started getting more minutes late in the season.
Right. It's a precarious situation for Dusty May and his staff, because the roster construction has to continue. And they've got 3 players committed now. 2 seem certain to show up. The third waiting on the NBA. But you want to keep that line of communication with Cason wide open, because I think Michigan still needs a couple of shooters. And the last thing you want to do is add players at that position and have Cason say, you know what, I'm out of here. You're loading up my position. That's a tough. You've got talent acquisition as a priority, but you've got to be very careful.
Tim, look for LJ Cason's. I really expect for his shooting to improve a tangible, tangible. I think his repetition, comfort. I feel like his shot mechanics are there. His confidence is there. Felt like, you watch him in warm-ups, it feels like his shot goes down and gets in games, and just wasn't really translating. I think that dude is going to be a better shooter in year 2. I mean, I hope I'm not being Pollyannish about it, but I think he's a better shooter than he showed here in his freshman season. So I'm expecting an uptick, maybe like Elliot Cadeau, and we can use this as a jump off here to start getting into your scouting report. Some of these transfers, or all of these transfers, as a matter of fact, that Michigan has gotten after you give a word or two about the other guys on the way out, Justin Pippen and Sam Walters. Can't say I was that surprised to see either one of those guys see their names hit the transfer wire.
Yeah. So Sam Walters' role was greatly diminished. The Big Ten seemed a little fast and a little physical for him. I'm not sure if you realize this, Sam, but he had 1 basket in February and March. I mean, he just went silent. His defense was a little bit of a concern. I think he'll develop over time and be a good shot specialist. I would imagine that Dusty May would have wanted him to stay. But but he was not making shots, and he wasn't getting a role, and his departure was predicted. Regarding Justin Pippen, I thought he was a good player, a really bright future, and can become a star at the right spot. It's hard to be an NBA Sun. And I remember I spoke to Scotty I think it was in November, about Justin. He had just had that surgery. I don't know if it was a sports hernia or something. Like, he had something. So it was a double challenge for him to be a freshman and to deal with a health issue. I remember walking away from the Scottie Pippen conversation thinking this may not end well, because I would imagine that Scotty was calling Dusty a lot. Like, what's the deal? Why isn't he playing? But just like Walters, since the start of February, Justin Pippen was 2 for 14 from the field. That's, I know it's limited time. It's hard, but you just have to be able to make shots at some point. And just like Cason, he didn't have any confidence to do that.
And he can't. Thing that he can't do that LJ Cason can do is LJ Cason can blow by people, and that's not Justin Pippen's game.
No,
right? So, and as you saw LJ Cason, you saw his arrow pointing up, and him getting more minutes, and that role kind of really becoming more defined. It's like, okay, I can see where this is going.
Mm-hmm.
Time to go.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. I think you're right.
So, Elliot Cadeau, former 5-star point guard, goes to North Carolina, and this just goes to show you, just because you're a 5-star doesn't mean that you're gonna hit the ground running, because he starts out in North Carolina, and Tim, man, the stats, the shooting statistics especially, they were really, really in the tank. And I'll get into the whys, according to his brother, for instance, but he really struggled out the gate, improved significantly, though, in the sophomore year.
I agree. Welcome to Michigan basketball to Elliot. He's a really good basketball player, a good reputation as a leader. And when he committed, that's the first thing that I laughed about is Michigan basketball fans are probably saying, well, I didn't really watch Carolina this year. They were not good. I didn't watch them a lot either. I saw them twice against Duke, and I think once versus Louisville. But actually, Elliot Cadeau, like he was a media darling during the NCAA tournament. I think that Michigan fans, like during the tournament, who did they see more than anybody else? They saw Charles Barkley, and they saw Jennifer Garner, and they saw Elliot Cadeau, because he was on that Marriott commercial where he had on his North Carolina hat, and he walked out of the lobby and threw a ball and led the North Carolina band as they followed him out the parking lot. He must have received a ton of money for that. I mean, that was a pretty cool commercial. And he's a good looking kid. He's got a great smile. He looks like somebody that you want to hang out with. He's not a star at all. He's a good handler. He's tiny as a point guard, and I think that's one of his biggest issues as a freshman, just getting used to the size in the ACC. He can get wherever he wants with the ball. He changes speeds, but he's smaller than Tre Donaldson. He's smaller. He's probably about the same size as Frankie Collins, just to give a comparison. Bigger than Doug McDaniel. And he's going to be that pass first type of player, run the offense, get out in transition. But you're right. He's got to be able to make a 3-point shot. And so far in his career, horrible as a freshman, not good as a sophomore. I think his lack of size hurts him when he tries to finish in the paint really, really quick. But I also think just like you talked earlier about LJ Cason, he gets done with his season. April is spent taking care of academics, resting up, having some fun on campus. But May, June, July, you've identified that you're not really a good, reliable shooter right now. That's the time you can turn your game around. And I think that if I had a wish, it's that Elliot Cadeau and LJ Cason become really good friends and they get up about 60,000 shots this summer. That would help everybody a great deal.
So to put some numbers behind it, Elliot Cadeau was an 18.9% three-point shooter as a freshman. I mean, that's a guy who has lost complete and total confidence as a shooter. I mean, that's a notion. You think Roddy Gale was struggling from three? That's worse than Roddy Gale was struggling. All right. Now, to his credit, that young man went from that to shooting almost 34% from three as a sophomore.
That's acceptable.
33.7% from three, shooting 2 attempts a game. So he became a guy who was an acceptable 3-point shooter. You want him to become a reliable 3-point shooter, right? And so you want him to step that up, step his game up in that regard a little bit more. 44.5% shooter overall, but a high assist man, 6.2 assists. They really were ragging on, and understandably so. His turnovers, 3.1 turnovers per game, Tim. So
that's like Danny Wolf numbers.
Yeah, 6-3 turnover rate. So 2-1 turnover rate, but you don't want 3 turnovers a game from your point guard. So you want to bring that number down, of course. So that's something to look at. But one of the things that along the way, doing some research on him, he said his brother was talking about some of the struggles with his shooting and his confidence. One of the reasons why he went back and forth with the coaching staff, said, they really did a number on his confidence. Said they based on the way they play there, they were telling him not to shoot mid-range shots. Like, it's like either a 3-pointer or you're to the rim. And he said, mid-range shot is one of his best shots. And so they just got in his head about, hey, that's not a good shot. It's not a good shot. One of the best shots in his game. And it just really messed with him as a freshman. And he had to really work on that to the point of rebuilding his confidence. And that was something that from his freshman year on, he was just a work in progress of getting himself back to where he was mentally when he was one of the best players in the country.
Yeah, I'm not sure that Dusty May is going to love mid-range either. Tre Donaldson didn't shoot a lot of mid-range. Dusty enjoys the analytics, threes and layups. And so, maybe that's something that Elliot will be asked to explore a little bit more. But I'm excited for a new look. I think he seemed like a really good kid, like a good program player. And I'm gaining so much confidence that if Dusty May likes a guy, I like him too.
Right. So, it'd be great to see how he does in Dusty's scheme. And Dusty seems to be great at figuring out how to fit what he does to the players that he has. That's one of the things I like about Dusty. Like, what do I have? Okay, let's cater to the talent that we have too. Let's do that as well, fellas. Talking about his coaching staff. So that's a great talent that he and they have. And so they also go out and get a guy who we talk a lot about toughness and physicality, right? And physicality isn't just about throwing elbows, like you say, Tim, but it is about being a presence and making your presence felt, right? And when Michigan played Illinois, when Illinois played anyone, even though he just got here or just got there in the Big Ten, that is, I felt Morez Johnson I felt his presence, Tim. I feel like we're going to feel his presence here at the University of Michigan because he was a big transfer addition out of the portal for the Wolverines.
Yeah, I've known Morez Johnson since he was in high school. He was at the top 100 camp. You were there. You saw him. He's from St. Rita in Illinois, which is a basketball power. And you may say, well, gosh, we lost Vlad, we lost Danny. Who's Michigan's center next year? It's Morez Johnson, and he's going to remind you a lot of Moussa Diabate. Do you see that? Long, active, great impact.
I can see that.
Yeah, I don't remember him at the top 100 ever shooting threes. I never saw him shoot any threes at Illinois, and maybe that's a Brad Underwood thing. He really likes his big guys in the paint, but I think that the athleticism is going to be really important. I would love to see Elliot Cadeau and Johnson be able to get that lob game, middle screen game going, because I think he can be a serious lob threat. That was really quick work by Dusty, and I'd love to talk to him sometime and find out about their system, because they're in the middle of the Sweet 16 and they grab two immediate starters at the two biggest positions that you need impact was really, really impressive to me. And so what they need now is they need a backup point guard. They need a wing shooter, maybe two, and more importantly, the starting power forward alongside Johnson. And I feel like maybe we have that.
Yeah, a guy who is going to give them a physical presence inside, a finisher inside. He's going to be an outstanding rebounder in and out of his area. He can block shots. He can defend. He gives you some back to the basket as well. I think we're frustrated Illinois fans, and this is how fans can get when a guy leaves, they bring up the warts. They feel like he shot a few too many mid-range shots. Maybe tried to extend his range a little too much to not be a great shooter, but he was a freshman. And I feel like that's a part of his game that maybe with time on task, maybe he becomes a better shooter. But he certainly is not a guy who you look at and say, oh man, yeah, that's a guy who you think could stick some jumpers. That's not a strong suit of his, Tim, but maybe it's something that with some polish, maybe Dusty might give him some freedom to take some shots, but he certainly would have to show he could do that in practice before Dusty would say, hey, yeah, I want you doing that. But all that physicality we talked about, Morez would give him some of that.
Yeah. Good addition, 4 or 5. And I bet that he has some skills that we haven't seen yet. So that's a really intriguing pickup.
All right, but then the number one player in the portal, and you talk about a compliment, a great compliment. This is if he winds up matriculating to Michigan. Yaxel Lendeborg. Now, you talk about a guy who brings you the multi-faceted offensive game. And when you say, man, who's going to give you that? In baseball, you talk about the 5 tools. Danny brought you all the tools. He could score, he could shoot, he could rebound. He could score, he could assist, he could rebound. He could block shots. Yaxel Lendeborg, he was doing it all. And he's doing it all to the point where I don't know what your NBA friends are saying about that. He's testing the NBA waters, Tim, and he says now if the NBA says they'll give him a guaranteed contract, he will go that route. But if they say they aren't going to give him a guaranteed contract in the form of signing him that, first round pick or what have you, then he's going to sign with Michigan and come here and work his way into the guarantee that way. But the UAB transfer for now, if he goes to play college basketball next year, to be at the University of Michigan.
Yeah, I honestly have never seen him play. I watch a lot of college basketball, and I never circled around to get UAB in my must-watch list. Lendeborg is really talented. I watched a ton of film on him. 17 and 11. An elite rebounder, 2-time All-League. Definitely an NBA resume in terms of his measurables, and that's good. He's super talented, and he could be a transformational player like Danny. Like Danny Wolf was good from day one. We didn't really know how good he could be. The fact that Lendeborg loves Dusty May in his system, he wants to play at Michigan. I think that Danny Wolf is really going to help our recruiting of him and his decision making, because as he tests the NBA waters, that's going to be a problem, because Michigan now has to tap the brakes, right, Sam? Like we definitely need a center, and so we've got to wait. I think it's May 28th. We have to wait for him to make his decision by then, and if we wait that long, are there any other centers that are worth getting? That concerns me a lot. And so I think that it would be really wise to have him get out there and start doing his NBA workouts, get feedback. If he gets a guarantee that he's going to go in the first round, then Michigan loses him, and they need to be able to find somebody else that's an option. I also would tell him over and over again that Danny Wolf was a back to the basket center. Then all of a sudden he's in the Big Ten. He's getting coached. He's playing elite competition. He doesn't have to play. I'm thinking about the American Athletic Conference. Who's he playing against there? There were Charlotte and Rice and East Carolina. Like, he's going to be going against Maryland and Michigan State. And we saw how Danny Wolf's game just exploded against that competition. I think there's a good chance, but I think it's going to be a bumpy road waiting for him to make his choice.
So I'm curious. You're right. They do need to be out looking for other guys, seeing what they might, what they might do, what they might say. There's, what do you think of the guy from UCLA, Aday?
To me, he slows the game down. He's built like Zach Edey, but not as strong and not as skilled. Gosh, I remember after the Top 100 camp having a lot of conversations with Flory Bidunga's step parents.
Yeah.
And they talked about how much Flory loved Michigan. And if you could get Flory to commit, I would tell Yaxel, good luck. Go get that money.
So here, I know Michigan was recruiting. I know Flory, like you. I know they really love Michigan as well before Dusty and company got here, and I know that they have been in the Flory Bidunga pursuit. Now, Flory, though, appears very far down the road with Kansas and staying at Kansas and Auburn. Those seem to be the two top suitors for him. But Michigan is involved with Flory. Now, to what extent, are they to the point where they could step up and surprise? That I couldn't tell you, Tim. That I couldn't tell you.
I hear you. So good. I mean, good stuff though. Good topics, and definitely a lot of things to keep watching, because they're not stopping. The roster construction is real, and this is going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll be keeping you posted. We'll be back talking about portal, and then they haven't even started recruiting. The recruiting cycle, and they'll be recruiting high school players again. There is still that, folks, by the way. Crazy, right? But we'll be here to talk about that too, like always, on the next edition of the Michigan Basketball Insider.